Aged blackened strakes and rusted nails. Twisted hulls and mud-buried keels. Shattered prows and storm-broken backs. Racked by tides and tide. Skeletons of long-dead vessels, hidden for centuries. Now their stories are brought back to life. An amazing tale of archaeology and ingenuity.
The excavation is absolutely a watershed in Viking studies.
The scattered fragments and wreckage are echoes of forgotten voyages.
There's just so many questions that we still need to answer.
Echoes of the lost Viking fleet of Roskilde. From the late 8th to the mid-11th centuries, the Scandinavian peoples burst from their frontiers almost wherever the seas could take them. Through archaeology, now we can explore the world of Viking life by understanding the realm of the Viking dead. Longships. In the Viking Age, the sight of these craft must have provoked fear. Off the shores of Britain, Europe, or even in Scandinavia itself.
Obviously, one of the things the Vikings are most known for is their ships, these amazing longships. Actually, there's lots of different kinds of them, but it is certainly true that Viking shipping technology is very good indeed, and it's getting better and better all through the centuries prior to the Viking Age and into the age of the Vikings itself. And there's a certain sense, I think, in which that technology is developing because it's needed, but also the potential that it gives means they can do more things with it.
Everyone in the Viking Age who lived coastal near must have known how to sail.
Today, the longboat is the instantly recognizable symbol for Vikings. And yet, for the best part of a millennium, no one ever saw an actual longship. All there were those on Scandinavian picture stones or the Bayeux tapestry at the end of the Viking period. That changed around 800 years later, with the discovery in the 19th century of spectacular boat burials in Norway, like the Gokstad ship. But archaeologists debated whether these boats had ever actually sailed, on the open seas at least, or if they had been specially made for the grave. Then in 1962, in Denmark, the world saw beyond any doubt Viking ships had once sailed the fjords and the seas. The waterway of Pebren at Skuldelev, 20 kilometers north of the city of Roskilde. Archaeologists embarked on one of the most innovative and ambitious rescue excavations ever attempted. It would take them 4 months under time pressure, working in the mud, completely surrounded by the waters of the fjord, and always vulnerable to the elements. But in the end, it revealed to the world not 1 or 2, but 5 real seagoing ships from the Viking Age.
The excavation of the ships at Roskilde is absolutely a watershed in Viking studies. It's many decades in the past now, but it's absolutely fair to say that it transformed our understanding of Viking boat technology. It's also, of course, a really high-profile archaeological project, one of the first of its kind, actually, in Europe. And it caught the imagination not only of the Danish public, but around the world. It did an immense service to Viking archaeology and scholarship, and it's even now, all these decades later, it's an absolute credit to its originators.
I mean, when the Skuldelev ships were found and excavated during 1962, I don't think anybody could have imagined what they would mean, not only to the maritime culture of Denmark and what we suddenly knew about that, but also what it would mean for the city of Roskilde.
The excavation led to the foundation of the world-famous Viking Ships Museum.
They became part of a worldwide story of the Viking exploring, the Viking voyages, the raids, and the trading sails and the maritime networks of the world. And it was the first time that there'd been such a big maritime find from the Viking Age.
The museum researches all aspects of Scandinavian boat building, sailing, and life in the time of the great longboat fleets. In pride of place, in the Viking Ships Hall, are the most original Viking ships you can see anywhere in the world, together in one place. They're compelling for anybody interested in the Viking Age or maritime history. And this is the first time British archaeologist Tim Sutherland has seen them for himself.
Oh, here they are, wow. That's pretty impressive. I didn't expect them to be on that scale and so well preserved. It's amazing. I mean, it's in fantastic condition. Just breathtaking, absolutely mind-blowing, and the amount of information you get from these ships, and they were just found just in the mud. I mean, they're really complete as well, considering they've been sitting around in a harbour for 1,000 years. It's unbelievable. I mean, the condition of some of them is brilliant.
It's extremely fortunate any of the timbers survived at all, after so many centuries at the bottom of the fjord. The timbers had to be specially treated over several years so they could be displayed like this. More survived of some ships than others. The parts that didn't rot were those which had sunk into the mud of the shallow part of the fjord where they'd been abandoned.
It just looks like, some of them just look like they might be 100 years old or so. You know, they're a bit rough around the edges, but considering they're 1,000 years old, and the Viking ships, I mean, finding one Viking ship at all is an incredible rarity, but considering there's 5 here, and in such good state of preservation, and different types as well.
These new types of boat were among the most revealing aspects of the excavation.
It gave us new kinds of ships that we'd suspected from the written sources, from the sagas. Logically, they had to be there, kind of ocean-going cargo ships, transport ships, that kind of thing. But before Roskilde, we'd really only seen the kind of classic Viking longship. And Roskilde gave us these other types. It gave us a sequence of different sorts of Viking ships.
Fantastic. And all because they've sank into the mud in the bottom of the harbour and then just been preserved for 1,000 years.
The upper parts of the hulls had either slowly rotted away or had been broken off by passing vessels over hundreds of years. Yet even as late as the 20th century, there was still enough material projecting up from the fjord bed for local mariners to know something was there.
In the 50s, they knew that there was something laying there. In the talk between fishermen, they called it Queen Margaret ship. So they just named it without knowing anything about it, because they in between they had bits and pieces from these boats in their nets.
These bits and pieces had been found continually for many years, and were thought to be from the later Middle Ages. In the early 1960s, a move was made to find out more. It was thought that there was some potential for archaeology, but these finds turned out not to be from the medieval Queen Margaret's time.
Some pieces of timber were taken up, and it looked suspiciously like Viking ships. So they started to dive. And it was identified that it was very probably Viking ships, and that there were several of them.
Elsa Rosedale was one of the team of archaeologists who uncovered them. She's one of Denmark's most respected archaeologists. But in 1962, she was a young student.
So what were your first memories of the dig?
What sticks in my mind is that we were part of a very important and fascinating excavation, and there was water all around, and it was a very, so to speak, watery excavation.
The main challenge was the physical problem of how to excavate the timbers from the fjord bed far out into the open water. Dig leaders Ole Krumlin Pedersen and Olaf Olsen decided to use technology developed for maritime engineering. They would build a coffer dam.
So when you see there the coffer dam,
Yeah.
and it's quite big, isn't it?
Coffer dams had been used in maritime archaeology before, but rarely on this scale. It enclosed an area almost 2 kilometres square. And though the channel in the fjord here was relatively shallow, the temporary walls still held back at least 2 meters depth of water on all sides.
We were working from wooden bridges stretched across the dig. So
Yeah.
we were working on our stomachs or on our knees and using these water pistols and to clean the space after we had, with our dirty hands,
Yeah.
taken the mud and the shells and the stones up.
The ship's hulls had been flattened by the weight of the mud over centuries. But also, they were covered with many stones, which it seemed had been used to fill and deliberately sink the boats into position.
Because of the condition of the timber, there had to be sprinklers so to keep them wet at all times. And of course, we also got some of the water. That was why we were in waterproof. And also, the surface of the timbers was soft, while the interior of the timbers was very hard. So we couldn't use trowels. We had to use our tiny hands and to take away the mud and the shells and the stones and so on. So our fingers they looked terrible.
So you were literally digging with your hands and your fingernails?
Yeah. But then it was fascinating to scrape away the mud and see the beautiful timbers appear.
It was hard work, but there were some perks of having your own private beach out in the middle of the fjord in summer.
We sneaked away on the other side where there was a bit of sand and sat and had a beer or a drink or something and had
Yeah.
a talk until it was discovered and we were not allowed anymore.
Students.
Yeah. The timbers were taken up individually and put in big plastic bags which were water sealed, and then they were put in a big dam at the National Museum Conservation Department. And then they started to do the conservation business, which is basically to replace the water in the cells with something else.
Yeah.
The timbers dated to around the first half of the 11th century, towards the end of the Viking Age. But the confused tangle of timbers didn't yet look like Viking ships. As each fragment was carefully logged and recorded, Pedersen and Olsen, experts in maritime architecture, began to see the shapes of different Viking boat types. They thought at first that there were 6.
Table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those numbers still stick, except that what we at the time thought were 2 ships, that has turned out to be 1 ship, and that is the very long ship now called number 2 plus 4.
Hull find 2 plus 4 was around 30 meters long, much longer than expected, and part of it projected beneath the cofferdam wall. It's still the longest Viking boat ever found. Reconstructed, it sails again on Roskilde Fjord, the Sea Stallion. Despite all the technical challenges, the dig had to be completed in just 4 months.
there was a limit to the excavation because it had to be finished before the autumn storms started.
Work went on apace until late summer 1962.
So everybody was it was a daring thing to do the excavation and see what was preserved of these ships.
Yeah, something that I think I would recognise and lots of other archaeologists would recognise. You had to be brave. Yeah. And I think sometimes you have to stick your neck out a bit because these are untried methods and untried principles and scientific procedures or whatever. And sometimes they are not quite ready, or you are right at the cutting edge of this. And so I think the word brave is quite appropriate because you never know whether it's going to work or not.
But it worked here. But that's a dig. That's a dig for you.
She was just starting out on what would prove a long career in archaeology. But it was Elsa's good fortune to discover one of the most important and iconic pieces of ship's architecture.
We were very lucky in that the stem, the complete stem of one of the a small cargo ship was preserved, and I found it.
You were the first person to uncover it?
Yes.
Every Viking boat had 2 stems at either end of the keel. Elsa's find was the only complete one to be found.
Imagine finding that. It's absolutely beautiful.
4 meters long, one piece of timber.
One piece of carved timber. And now it is on the wall in the museum. Like pride of place.
And that was a big day. To be honest, I didn't really realize how unique it was. For the press it was, of course, especially interesting that it was a young girl of 20 who was with mud all over who found it.
Not exactly glamorous.
No. I've told my students about it for many, many years. It's memory lane.
It is, but it's also very, very important. And now that is an archive in itself.
After several years of conservation, the ships were eventually painstakingly put back together. And in 1969, the Viking Ships Hall opened. In the decades since, the museum has expanded to encompass its own artificial island in the fjord. It was during the construction of this in 1997 that 9 more Viking ships were discovered. They were probably old boats, left to sink in the mud at the water's edge. Conservation and analysis of these wrecks is still going on, adding to the vast amount of data already gained from the Skuldelev finds. The staff of the Viking Ships Museum, many of whom are volunteers, are all passionate about their work here.
If you once come in the door at this museum, you will stay here and study these beautiful ships.
Their unique spirit is partly fostered by the bonds that grow from not only studying, but also sailing Viking boats. It's training day at the Viking Ships Museum, and we've been granted special access. Today, around 60 men and women will sail the flagship of what's now a fleet of reconstructed Viking boats. Many of them have crewed Sea Stallion all its sailing life, going back a decade. But new members have to be brought up to speed.
This is just a one-day sailing, and we are sailing in Roskilde Fjord outside the museum, and we go to a little bit more bigger waters.
In fact, these waters are very near where the Skuldelev boats were sunk 1,000 years before.
On board we have, as you can hear, the skipper who's giving all the orders. We have to do what he wants us to do. This, when we hear the orders coming from the skipper, you'll hear an echo at the midship. We have a middle shouter, and the middle shouter sees to that the order comes to the front. The front can't hear the skipper. It's 90 feet long boats, and in wind and everything, you can't hear it. Yeah. And we have a lookout in the front.
The experienced crew have a wealth of knowledge for the new crew members to pick up on.
When you're new on the Sea Stallion, you go through a learning phase where you start by looking into your job, the rope that you're pulling, and understanding what you're doing on that specific task. And then at some point, when people have sailed for a while, they start looking up. And not just seeing their own task, learning that, but when that is just a thing in their body that they've learned, then they start looking up, and then they start to see the function of their own product in the mixture of all the other inputs on the boat, all the other ropes that has to work together, because it's one big sail. So every time you pull a rope, you are pulling on a rope that pulls in something else in the other end of the ship.
Like Karen and Ivan, Vibeke Bischoff is also a former skipper of Sea Stallion. She's chief of the museum's boat reconstruction team. It's her job to bring boats like the Sea Stallion back from the grave.
I like boats and I like sailing. And if you sail a boat and it doesn't function or doesn't maneuver well, then it's no fun. So finding out how to make a ship maneuver and perform well, that drives me.
The sudden surge of Viking raids at the end of the 8th century is thought to be partly due to new Scandinavian ship technology and sailing skills at the time.
Why did it explode like this in the Viking Age? Maybe they needed to travel at that time. They were ready to travel. The ships were ready. The human beings were ready to go on adventures across the seas. The Viking ships we know, they are a mixed rowing boats and sailing boats, many of them. They carried a large crew, and if you could sail out, you could row back if the wind dropped. If I say the Sea Stallion again, you have a crew of 60 rowers, and you need to be able to tell them what to do, and they need to be able to work together as a machine. Because a ship doesn't function in itself just because it's designed like it is. You need this crew to maneuver the sail, to propel the ships with oars, or to handle the boat correctly in order to make it move.
Before this can happen, someone has to work out from the archaeology how a centuries-old Viking boat was built.
In reconstruction, you need to be open-minded, because nothing is ever how you thought it would be. We want to try to get as close to the original hull form of the ship finds as possible. And of course, when you see this, there are parts missing, but that's the word reconstruction. We don't construct the ship because we don't shape them in our own view. We try to get as close as on the original hull form in order to test the sailing performance of the ship later.
Vibike's a trained boat designer, but she's moved away from using only computers to reimagine Viking craft.
You can present the ship finds in a book or in an article, but you don't learn anything from theoretical reconstruction or publishing in an article. You learn something when you really go all the way from the ship find through reconstruction of the hull form, through building of the full-scale reconstruction, and then sailing the ship find in its original waters, where it has originally sailed. And that is what all this research at the Viking Ship Museum is about.
She begins by examining every single fragment of a hull's surviving timbers. They're photographed, scaled down, and mounted on card to create a miniature kit of parts.
So what scale is this now then?
1 to 10. I always use 1 to 10 because then you don't make any mistakes of the measures. 1 meter is 10 centimeters. I can cope with that. I cut every piece from the whole find and attach them together.
So can you show me how you put it into action, how you transfer that into a three-dimensional model?
Yeah. As you see here, I have attached the first 4 strakes. When I begin, I drill with a 0.6 millimeter drill a hole through all the nail holes. So I'm sure when I attach them to each other, that I have the right position.
It can only go back in one position then?
Yeah.
The original
it's
position?
Like if you have an orange and you peel it and you have the skin lying on the floor or the table, then if you put it back together, it will be round, even though it lies on the table flat. And it's the same with this one. So slowly you can build up the shape of the ship.
On average, only about 25% of most of the recovered Roskilde and Skuldelev hulls have survived. But once Vibeke has the position of the ship's nails, even only on these known sections, she can reconstruct the missing parts.
So I can say I have a hole here from the frame, and then I have to find the matching nail holes. Building a model like this is actually like reversed naval architecture, you can say. By building it, we can study their mind when they were building the ship.
And the other thing that I like about this way of doing things is it's very basic. I don't want to be crude, but you can do it with your hands, and you can do it with pieces of paper or with
and
little...
it's cheap and fast.
And I still prefer it.
I will go on. Yeah.
The next stage is to take the reconstructed hulls from cardboard into a more solid form. The museum's boatyard workshops can carry out every process in the reconstruction of a full-scale Viking ship. Rope, tar, iron, and most crucial of all, wood. It took dozens of individually selected trees to make just one boat.
Can you go into a forest and say that tree would be perfect for that job?
We try to find out how this tree was looking.
Yeah.
The size of the tree, the dimensions, the height, the length of the planks, and the quality. And then we go into the forest and look for it.
Right.
And sometimes we look for days and weeks because it is difficult to find. And I think experimental archaeology here at the Viking Ship Museum is about putting people with different backgrounds to look at the same plank, because they'll see different things when they look at the boat.
Do you think in the Viking period they would have managed the trees and the forest to get particular timber like we do now?
We have had a week seminar just discussing if the Vikings actually took care of their good trees. And if you go to traditional boat building in Norway, for example, they knew the good trees, they have got names because they know, oh, this tree, don't take that because the boat builder, he needs it. Right. Maybe in 30, 40, 50 years. So I think that they have been taking care of the good trees.
As well as the materials the Vikings used, it's also important to use the same tools that they used.
We can just bring some of these, you can take these.
One of the first things Soren and the team had to do in building their first reconstruction was to work out just how tree trunks were cut into long planks or strakes without machines or even saws.
They didn't use a saw. There is no saw marks after any saw marks on the boats over there. We have been looking and we can't find anyone. And so they used axes and cutting tools for everything.
There were many types of axes used in the Viking Age. Every type used in the museum has been forged from an archaeological find. They work backwards from tool marks on the wood to work out what axes might have been used to make them.
This is a very iconic axe from the Viking Age. It's made with one edge from one side and flat on the other side. And the handle, it's twists a little, so it goes out. So you can have your fingers, you can go down the plank without hurting your
fingers. So the plank of wood is there, it would be like that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that we would describe that in terms of modern tools as a planing tool. It's a finishing tool to smooth things off.
Yeah, exactly.
This is an iconic shape from the Viking period. I've seen lots of illustrations of Viking axes. I've actually seen lots of these in museums. And most people associate Vikings with hacking each other to pieces.
Yeah.
But of course, most of the axes are for work like this. It's wood. They are woodworking tools,
Yeah.
primarily.
Yeah.
And of course, all the different shapes have very specific jobs as well.
From cutting the tree down, through cleaning the bark off, and finally preparing the planks and strakes, various types of axes are used.
The last job is to use the broad axe, because it's like we talked about. It's not doesn't care about what you do. Then it gets.
It doesn't care about your leg either if you miss it.
No, that's right. I've never cut my leg, so don't say that.
Don't say no. Sorry.
You want to try? No.
I'll try it on a short one first before I take my leg off.
And these marks, you can actually see them. It's on some planks. But of course, we are looking for tool marks, so we can be very sure that they have actually used this kind of axe on the planks.
Yeah, it gets it really smooth, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think that was made by an axe, would you?
No,
if you're thinking about it,
No,
everybody
that's right.
expects an axe to produce a really
Yeah.
rough mark. But
Right.
that's beautiful. I worked on a building that was about 900 years old in Windsor Castle, and in the roof of the castle there were big oak timbers.
Yeah.
And the way they tested whether the timbers were good or bad was by
Yeah. And listen.
and they listened to it.
Yeah.
Because the better the timber, it almost rings it. It's a nice solid tone,
Yeah,
and then there was just a thud.
Yeah.
when it was
Yeah,
wrong.
exactly. Yeah, I learned that too at when I was a boat builder, to actually with a hammer just listen to
The wood. Yeah.
listen to the wood and smell the wood when it goes down in the forest. You can
Oh, right.
smell if it's a good wood. You can,
that's
this kind of oak trees,
Yeah.
they smell in a certain way, and if it's too sweet or if it's too, then don't bring
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
On the Bayeux tapestry, for example, the Wilhelm the Conqueror, he asked a guy to build him about 300 ships or something like that. And this guy, the guy he asked, is standing like very demonstrative like that with his broad axe.
It's
here.
special axe.
And I think it's because they want to show us that he was talking with the shipwright or the boat builder.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So they were well paid at that time. Yeah.
But the next step is to put it all into action and sail the boat. Sea Stallion has reached the open water, ready for sail training for the new crew.
This is Roskilde Fjord, and in fact, we believe that this is almost how it looked in the Viking Age, but the land has raised a little bit and the waters were lowered a little bit. It's perfect waters for training this, because it's a protected area. It doesn't. Of course, the wind can come here and it gives us some challenges, but almost never high waves and so here. So it's to take out some rookies to learn. This is perfect.
While the new faces get used to being at sea in a Viking boat, the experienced crew members keep a watchful eye. It's in the blood.
Moving around the boat, constantly keeping an eye on the trim, that's just it's a bodily thing for me. I can't sit still when I notice the boat going a bit that way. It's an irritation in my stomach if we're not lying correctly in the water. I usually say that I sail with my ass, because I feel it in my ass if we're not laying correctly in the water. If the sheet is too tight, I can feel it saying.
Dendro-analysis of the wood used in the Skuldelev boats revealed that they were all probably built in different locations and at different times. Sea Stallion was built in Ireland and so certainly crossed the North Sea at least once.
The ships would have sailed different waters. So in the inner waters of Denmark, the waves have a different capacity than the waves in the North Sea where the Norwegian ships would have been sailing. And the waves around the coast of Ireland and England, for example, going around Landsend into the English Channel, are completely different from that. So you need to build a boat that fits the waters and the waves that you're going out into.
Sea Stallion has very particular characteristics in its design.
This is a boat with room for 60 people sitting rowing. On a trading ship, you wouldn't have these many thwarts in the boat. You wouldn't have oar holes. You wouldn't be able to row it. So based on the archaeology, you could say that this is a boat for transporting troops, basically transporting men. But that's not to say that you would have been rowing the boat all the way to England or Ireland or anything. Would of course had been sailing as much as you can.
Sailing the reconstructed boat gives the crew valuable insight into the logistics and planning that went into any seaborne expedition in the Viking Age. Every time the boat sails, new knowledge is gained, and all of this is fed back to the museum.
But it's important to know that you can't just say, okay, I want to go to Ireland right now, so I'll sail out and then I'll be there in like, I don't know, 12 days or something. You have to have a lot of weeks to do it because you can't go out unless you know you can get in to shore within 5 or 6 days. Because with the amount of people you need aboard to maneuver the ship and to row the ship, to balance the ship, we don't have enough room for food and water for more than 5 to 6 days.
But it's unlikely that a boat like this would have sailed alone on a raiding expedition.
At some point, probably towards the, let's say about the 820s, something like that, maybe the 830s, the nature of that raiding starts to change. It becomes more organized. The forces of Vikings get bigger and bigger. And one of the things we're seeing in the archaeology now is confirmation that the descriptions of the scale of this raiding, when you get into the 800s, first dozens of ships and then hundreds, does seem to match the archaeology that these Viking forces have left behind them. In other words, we really are dealing with massive Viking forces.
One thing is getting one ship, the Sea Stallion, over there at a specific date, at a specific point. A whole other deal is getting a whole fleet. At some points in history, it would have been maybe 200 ships. Some of them this size, some of them smaller, some of them cargo ships, and they would have been sailing so differently on the waters. And there is just a small adjustment on the rudder right now would mean that we don't get the same tacking possibilities as the next ship. So you very quickly get away from each other. So how did they communicate between the ships? How did they meet up at the same point? That's quite amazing. There's just so many questions that we still need to answer on how they did that. And we move to the other side. Because it's so light and we only go about a meter into the water. This is a boat that you can sail up on shore without it breaking or anything. So coming up to a place that you want to plunder, you could lay down the mast behind a hill or something and then come out of nowhere rowing up on shore. Well, actually, when we move out in waves in the high sea, the two sterns, they can move away from each other by a meter because the whole ship moves like a worm. There's a reason why it's called worms in the Viking Age, because it moves so much around.
The boat's flexibility comes from its build, because the planks and strakes have been formed with axes from long timbers, the grain running throughout. It wouldn't be as strong if they were made from many smaller, shorter sawn planks. All the time, the crew have to learn to understand what's going on instinctively, especially when the boat is under sail.
As you saw before, we were leaning very much to the lee side. And that's the thing about these boats, because they're so light and actually sort of lie on top of the water. We only go about 1.20 meters into the water. So we need the people aboard to be intelligent ballast, as we call it. We need people to think for themselves that now the boat is starting leaning to this side, I move up to the other side. If we were only 30 people aboard instead of the 60 that we are right now, then we wouldn't be able to balance the boat with this wind, with this much sail. So we would either have to reef the sail really much, or we wouldn't be able to sail in this weather. So yeah, it's really important that we're enough people aboard.
Whether they're ballast, hauling a rope, or pulling an oar, each crew member has less than 1 meter of personal space in the boat. Above all else, they have to learn to work together.
It's social skills, really, that's the key point to surviving on this ship. You can learn to sail it quite easily, I think, if you've just got a bit of a knack of being outdoors and pulling on a rope. But the social skills.
Yeah, you know this expression that we're all in the same boat? If you sail in a boat and you have rough conditions and you sail for many days or many weeks, we're in the boat together, so you're depending on each other. So you make friends with the crew, because you need to work together or nothing will function.
In sailing the reconstructed boat, the Viking Ships Museum team has perhaps also recreated something of the spirit that was needed to live and work aboard these vessels almost 1,000 years ago. The boats themselves have a limited working span in the water, just a few decades. But the experience, the comradeship, and the spirit of people working together like this in the Viking Age must have lasted lifetimes.
The lifetime experience of being in such a tight-knit community, the intimacy of the crew, the fun of going out into difficult situations with other people, pushing yourself, and drinking good beer in the harbour, and all that, the social world of it. It's also having a focus on what am I doing? How am I participating right now? But it's not either just a one-man thing at all. So it's co-creation all the time with the boat, with the sail, with the wind, with the water, with other people sailing, with all the 60 other crew members aboard, co-creating the fact that we're able to get a move on and sail where we want to. I think we should be watching the sail coming up now.